Okay, so let's jump right in. We're going to start with a pretty strange clue from the world of media, one that might just point to a massive system of control that's hiding in plain sight. And believe it or not, it all kicks off with a Lego cartoon.
So what is this first clue? Well, picture this. You're scrolling online and you come across a video explaining some really complex geopolitical event. But it's not a news report or a detailed analysis. It's a Lego animation. Yeah, actual toy bricks being used to break down international conflicts.
And look, this isn't just some funny meme, right? It raises a really serious question about how information is being packaged for us. Why are the most critical global issues being simplified, dumbed down to the level of a kid's playroom?
The source material we're looking at suggests this is a deliberate dumbing down of information. But what does this simplification actually achieve? And maybe more importantly, who does it serve? The answer might lie in the very tool we all use to think, language itself.
And that, right there, brings us to the concept of language. The argument being made here is that the way we think is fundamentally shaped and maybe even limited by the words we actually have available to us.
This slide just lays it out so clearly. One of the speakers in our source material pointed out that colloquial English can be, a comparatively poor language. While English speakers have one single general word for snow, some indigenous languages have over 30. Each one describes its unique color, texture, and even timing. I mean, that's a completely different way of seeing and interacting with the world around you.
Now, of course, English serves a hugely important purpose as the world's lingua franca, right? It's the common tongue that connects global business, science, and culture. But the argument here is that this simplified, one-size-fits-all version of the language comes at a cost.
And here is the absolute crucial point. This linguistic simplicity isn't seen as just an accident. No, it's a feature. And it's a feature that can be exploited. It can be weaponized to control our understanding, to limit our scope of thought, and to keep conversations stuck right at the surface level.
And you can really see the stark contrast with languages like Arabic, where just the juxtaposition of a single word can change the entire meaning of a sentence. This creates all these layers of significance, and it fosters a much more complex, more nuanced way of thinking. So, if our cognitive tools are being limited, where does that training even begin?
Well, that brings us straight to the modern education system, which the source material identifies as the primary engine where these intellectual and linguistic limitations are first taught and then reinforced, over and over again.
See, the argument here is that maybe the goal isn't what we think it is. It's not necessarily to educate in that classical sense, to create independent, critical thinkers. Instead, it might be about achieving a very specific and much more limited outcome.
And this is where the thinking leads to a really startling parallel. The argument is that two systems that we think of as total opposites, mainstream Western schooling and so-called radical madrasas, can sometimes use the exact same methodology, rote learning. The whole focus is on memorizing facts and then just regurgitating them, not on developing a process for independent thought.
And the fallout from this? It's huge. This method produces individuals who are trained to follow instructions and repeat information, but not to question it, not to connect different ideas or solve complex problems on their own. In short, it fosters a kind of intellectual dependency.
Okay, so if this isn't some big cosmic accident, then what is it? Well, the source suggests this isn't a flaw in the system. Instead, it's the fundamental design, a blueprint for social control that's been used for centuries.
And this is where the argument gets really, really provocative. The source frames this entire system as an evolution of colonial indoctrination. It's described as a tested and proven method, not just for ruling lands far away, but for creating a compliant and manageable population right here at home. The goal is to produce a predictable mindset.
So what's the end game, psychologically speaking? Well, it's something called learned helplessness. It's that feeling you get when you start to believe that your actions just don't matter, so you stop even trying. This deep-seated belief that you are powerless, well, that makes a person far easier to control.
And when you see this cycle laid out like this, it's chilling because it's so logical. First, the system fails certain communities. Then, denied that feeling of self-esteem through traditional schooling, young people naturally go looking for it somewhere else. This vulnerability makes them susceptible to radical ideologies, whether it's online or on the street, that promise the very power and respect they were denied. It's a predictable and absolutely devastating cycle. So, if that's the system we're supposedly in, how in the world do you break the spell? How can anyone reclaim their intellectual sovereignty and actually start to think for themselves again?
Well, the material we're looking at suggests we need to look back way back to an older model of thinking, the polymath. Ancient civilizations produced these brilliant scientific minds who were also deeply spiritual. For them, there was no conflict between the material world and the metaphysical. It was a holistic worldview, one we've largely lost to hyperspecialization and materialism.
Yeah, this quote just nails it, doesn't it? The idea is that reconnecting with this older wisdom, understanding our own internal chemistry and the patterns of history is the real key to unlocking our potential and being able to navigate the future.
So what's the actual game plan? What's the practical countercode here? Well, things like learning multiple languages literally build new neural pathways in your brain. Pursuing knowledge across all different fields, that's the polymath mindset, allows you to see patterns that others miss. It's all about actively building the intellectual muscle you need to resist this simplification machine.
And that really just leaves us with one last big thought. The tools we are given to think, our language, our education, they don't just describe reality, they actively construct it. And that leaves us with a critical question we all have to consider. Whose version of reality are we accepting, and what kind of world do we really want to build for ourselves?